I think everybody knows somebody that has been the victim of a scam. We've had people that say, yeah, my mother or my grandmother or my brother or my sister were contacted and told that I was being held hostage, right? And that they needed to send money. We had to address the messaging aspect. For people that are not in cybersecurity, this is a topic that can be scary. When all you're talking about or throwing at people are all the terrible things that happen with technology, it can be really scary and intimidating. We have such a diverse workforce. 40,000 of our people spend their days at 36,000 feet, right? So their experience with technology is very different than the rest of the employee population. So we've got to reach them in different ways.
Yeah.
Don't hire security people because you've got to be able to develop content for the person that doesn't understand cyber, right? And you've got to develop content in a very engaging way. And when you have security people developing security training, they're coming at it from a very different perspective.
Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, so I'm so excited for this podcast with you. As you know, my podcast named Vigilance is, I don't publish it often, but when I find a really hot topic like this one, I can't resist. So here we are today to talk about security and awareness training. And this whole topic came up very organically for us in our last quarterly meeting. We were talking about your amazing security and awareness training program and the engagement that you've gotten and your tchotchkes and the things that people, really want. And I've never seen a program like it. And, I have a big group that I work with. And so we're here today to talk about that. And but before we jump in, I want to hand it over to you and for an introduction.
Oh, thanks, Pam. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. So I guess for your listeners, I'm the CISO for Delta Airlines. I've been here for 8 years, and I think I've known Pam for all 8 of those years. So,
It's an honor.
likewise.
Yeah. So, kicking off, we know stats are vary, but generally 95%, I think the latest stat is 95% of breaches have some level of human error attached to it. It's very difficult to manage to this. We are all doing security and awareness training at some different level, but we all want to up our game. And you've really upped the game. And so maybe you can just kick off with a quick overview on your program.
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, what I would say is no program is complete without the tech, right? So obviously we've got technological controls in place, and we leverage defense in depth, but we can't overlook, and in my conversations with some of my CISO peers, there's mixed emotion around awareness programs. But within Delta, we really take awareness seriously. And we do because we've seen how effective our employee base can be when you equip them with knowledge and information. And we also have a culture inside of Delta of safety first always. That is our mantra. It's in our flight plan. It's every employee in the company knows what that means. So you can go to any one of 100,000 people and say safety first, and they can finish that sentence and they can give you examples of what it means. So from a security perspective, we lean into that really hard. What does safety mean from a cyber perspective? And what can we do to arm this army of 100,000 people to help us better protect Delta on the cyber side of things? So we really, I think, have had to rethink over the last several years, moving away from awareness messaging as being scary to how do we gamify awareness? How do we get people involved in it? How do we make it fun? How do we make people want to know more and feel like they're empowered as opposed to being a victim? Right? We don't want them to feel like they're being victimized. We don't want them to feel like if something bad happens, they're a victim or they've done something wrong. We want to give them the tools and the knowledge where they can feel empowered to do something positive and to fight back, right? To be part of that army of people we need to lean on and leverage as that first line of defense. So that's kind of how we lean into it. We start with a mindset.
Yes, yeah, I mean, perfectly said because security is everyone has to own security in the organization, and sometimes that message gets across and sometimes it doesn't. It's more challenging than ever because of the way the adversary is using AI. It's just so much more sophisticated and targeted, and they take advantage of that human vulnerability. So what are some of the specifics that have built and this isn't something you built overnight because it's so amazing. It was something you built over time. But what are some of those elements of the program that have really gotten all the users to pay such close attention?
Right. So great question. And I think if we were going back 8 years ago to what we first had in place and then what we're getting ready to launch this October, the change is pretty dramatic, right? We took a standard approach to awareness 8 years ago because we didn't have the budget to do much more than your basic awareness, right? Which is a phishing campaign launched on a subset of the population, see who reports it, see who clicks, go back to the people that click with some sort of additional training or additional messaging about how bad it was for them to do that and they shouldn't do that. And, adding them back into the next phishing campaign to see if they've learned anything, right? And what we saw doing that is it doesn't work. And I think if that's all you ever do, of course you're going to be disappointed with the outcome. And of course you're going to feel like the awareness doesn't work. What we did is we looked at what wasn't working and we said, how can we fix it? How can we make it better? And the first thing we had to do was we had to address the messaging aspect. To the point you made, for people that are not in cybersecurity, this is a topic that can be scary. When all you're talking about or throwing at people are all the terrible things that happen with technology, and there's a lot of terrible stuff that happens with technology, it can be really scary and intimidating for the end user who is not enmeshed in this on a daily basis, right? They sit at their computer to do email, or they go home and they want to do their taxes, or they want to look at photos, or they get on social media. And that's the extent of their interaction. And then you tell them bad things can happen through all those interactions. You're just making them afraid. So we wanted to understand, how can we change the messaging so that people aren't afraid to engage in cybersecurity? But more importantly, how can we teach them the tips and the techniques that they can use at home? How can we empower them to understand what they can do to protect themselves, to protect their kids when they're online? Let's remove the Delta needs from the equation temporarily. What can we do to empower people to feel like they can take control of cybersecurity matters in their personal life? And if we can teach them what to do in their personal life, they'll bring those habits to work. We won't have to talk about policy and standards, right? And the do's and the don'ts of the work environment. They'll already know because they're practicing those things in their personal life. So we spent probably 2 years just changing up the messaging and the approach and bringing in guest speakers to talk about, what are some things that you can do to improve the cybersecurity of your home computer system, to improve the security of your home Wi-Fi? What are things you can teach your kids to stay safe online? And that was pretty much the extent of our messaging for the first kind of 2 years that we were changing and morphing the program. And then over the last 2 years, we've really introduced gamification. Last 3 years, we've hired some incredible people, incredible talent into our awareness program. And we're leaning into the gaming piece of it. So we've created a phishing derby. And this thing has grown legs unlike anything or I guess tails and fins, unlike anything I've ever seen. And
I
it's
love it.
really because of the creative thought process that's gone into this. So to give you an idea of what this looks like, we've created a suite of fish. There are 4 of them, and they have their own stickers, and they represent the various forms of phishing that we have seen in the environment. And each fish, literally, these are nasty looking little fish, have personalities and names, right? And they have stickers and they have followings. So people are really leaning into this. And each week of our derby, well, first of all, you get a license number. So we have a registration process. You get to register for your fishing license. Last year, we had a 3-hour wait of people lined up downstairs in our cafeteria to register for the derby, to get their fishing kit. We gave them a box that had stickers for all of our little fish in there, that had this cute little Delta pilot duck in there, we made packets of, goldfish crackers, but they were branded for our derby. We had some other, the red fish, Swedish fish in there. So we leaned heavily into the fish and found everything we could, put it in the box. People registered. I think we had 2,500 people, which you're talking about security. That's pretty amazing.
That's amazing. That's congratulations. Yeah, that's super cool.
We're already past that in pre-registration this year. So people have been already asking and querying, hey, when are you guys going to do the derby again? How do I get registered? When do I get my license? We're 5 weeks away from the actual derby kickoff, and we've got more people registered than we had participate in all of last year's derby. So like I said, it's growing fins.
Growing fins.
So,
I just love it.
Throughout those 4 weeks, we send phishing emails, and people earn points to report them. And I'll come back to the report piece and how we had to change people's mindset around this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they report it and they get points. Every time you report a fish, you get points. And for every point, you get an entry into our enormous fishbowl. So your license number goes on a little slip of paper and it goes into the fishbowl. And at the end of the derby, all of the entries go into the bowl. The CIO and I pick out the winners. And last year they got a Yeti cooler, big Yeti cooler branded with our fishing derby logo. And they got a trophy.
I can see you looking around for your tchotchkes.
I'm looking for my tchotchkes. But this was the poster, and you can see
fun. Yeah,
the little
so cute
trophy, and so we had, and then we televise it, right? It's on our internal DeltaNet, the selection of the winners and the awarding of the prizes. It's all televised, and people tune in for that. And you've got the whole chat thing going on the side. So we're creating a lot of fun around it. We also did a cyber quest last year. So every day of October, we launched a campaign where we would send people on a quest. And it might be to go find something on the campus, or it might be to go read an article and respond to a question. We had them cracking passwords. We had them doing things they never would have thought they could do. And we had them emailing us daily, wanting to know when the next quest was coming out. I think we had 50,000 quests that went out last year. So the team was really super busy generating all of these things for people to go out and solve, puzzles to solve. And then they got points and they got entries in the fishbowl. By the end of October, we had over 54,000 entries in the fishbowl that we were picking from to get 5 winners. So this year we're going to do things a little bit differently, but it's the same type of event. So let me talk about reporting, because I think this is really...
That was my next question, so thank you.
And I think most people struggle getting employees to report when they have had a phishing email show up in their inbox. And it's either because they just want to ignore it and they delete it, or they've clicked a link and they don't want to acknowledge they clicked a link. They feel like if they just delete it, it goes away. And we know it doesn't just go away. We really want people to report. If for no other reason than it helps us refine the tooling we have in place to catch things that might be slipping through the filters. But we have to make it fun. And Delta has a culture, again, safety first, but we also have this philosophy of calling a safety timeout. Any employee in the operation, if they see a condition that warrants a pause, can call a safety timeout. And we reward that. So we needed to find a way to reward people who report a phish and don't look at it from a penalizing sort of view. So we do that through this phishing derby. You're gaining points. You're earning, additional entries into that fishbowl. You're increasing the opportunity to win some of our giveaways and our prizes. And we're looking at how we create that throughout the year so that you're earning points throughout the year as part of our phishing campaigns and not just in the month of October. So maybe you come into October and you've already correctly identified, 30 phishing emails we've sent out in the prior 10 months, or you've identified things that have slipped through the filter and we've said that they're actually phishes. We want to be able to give you points that you can use either through the Derby month or add them to the fishbowl. So we're continuing to iterate on how we engage people in protecting Delta.
So you're giving them points not just on the phishing campaigns that they catch, right? That you've sent, like you'll do a campaign, a phishing campaign, and they've recognized the fish, but it could actually be a fish.
Or actually be a fish. And we want to get to that point where we're doing the points throughout the year. Right now, what we do is we give them points for the fishes that we generate and send out during the month of October. And if they correctly identify those, they obviously get points and they get entries into the fishbowl.
And so, first of all, congratulations. This is so fun. I love hearing it again because we talked a little bit about, well, quite a bit about this in our last meeting, and it's just amazing the engagement. 54,000. I mean, that's crazy. So, are you able to measure the behavior change? Obviously, they're reporting more than they used to because they're getting rewarded for it. But the decrease in risk and security is measurable.
Yes. So, a couple of ways we measure that. Obviously, the scores, we have to do a training module every year for regulatory compliance, right? And we've seen the test scores improve. We also measure click-through rates. So when we do our internal phishing campaigns, we do measure how many of our employees are clicking the link versus how many are reporting. And our reporting was really low. That metric was really low. That metric is now gradually climbing, increasing, but the click-through rate has decreased. We used to have greater than 20% of people clicking the links in the test phishes we would send. That number has dropped into single digits, and it's low single digits, and it's been consistent. So yes, we do measure. And when we see people clicking links on certain topic areas, then we know we've got more education to do. And we'll go back and we'll regenerate certain campaigns and we'll create messaging after they've clicked and now they have to go take additional training. So yes, we've got measures in place that allow us to see where we're being really effective and where we still have some work to do.
Some work to do. Yeah, absolutely. Is there topics that you cover outside of the traditional email fish? Like, I don't know, smishing and vishing, and
Yeah,
we've got every
smishing,
version now.
vishing, yep, all of it, all of it. So because we experience all of it in the environment. And it's not that everything occurs through the Derby. There are guest speakers we bring in. Last year, we brought in a social media influencer who talked about um, the scams that she sees online. We brought in another individual who, in real time, showed how you can track people down on the internet, right? So we gave her two employees' names. She knew nothing about them. The employees agreed to be
Okay, I was
subject
gonna
for
say,
this.
did the
Employees
employees
agreed.
agree?
We got all the sign off and everything. But what she did then is 2 weeks later, when she came in to speak, these individuals were in the room and she shared with them everything she was able to glean about them just from social media. And I think it really helped people understand how much you're putting out there online about yourself. And is this really what you should be doing? Because the individuals in the room were shocked. I mean, she was able to deduce what their job was, where they like to go to eat, where they lived, who they socialized with. There were just a lot of revelations. And all of that was publicly available information that she was able to piece together to show them if I can do this, so can threat actors. right? And I'm doing this for purposes of demonstrating what you shouldn't be sharing. They're going to be doing it for purposes of trying to acquire your identity or do you harm.
Yeah, and that's a great way to up the game because, now the adversary, of course, I'm stating the obvious, has AI, so all of that scraping of data is automated, right? And very fast, and everything that they're sending is so perfect, right? We used to be able to recognize a fish because it was bad English, and now it's just perfect. And so it really requires us to constantly be upping your game, and you're clearly doing that. And so what's coming next year? Is there something that you can share, or is it like a we don't want to tell the employees of Delta who are sitting there suspenseful to find out what's coming next?
We want to keep it fresh, right? We want to keep them engaged for this year's event, and we will take the learnings from this year and we'll make improvements for next year. But it's about constantly, we have to stay current with the topics and the threats that we're seeing. Um, and then we have to, give them the tooling and the skills and the information to protect themselves in their personal life. I'm a firm believer they're bringing those behaviors to work, and we're seeing it.
I've not heard that before. I talk to, I have a big group of CISOs that I work with. That approach of teaching them how to take care of themselves, and first of all, fabulous for them, right? I get asked by my friends all the time, "What do I do? Should I shred this? Should I do that? What do I do?" And so the fact that you took that nurturing approach to them and their personal life, then they know how to carry it forward to work. It may seem obvious, but it wasn't to me until you told me that. I mean, that's super smart because you're training them, to be smart in their own lives and then bring that to work. Um, we all know that there's, a certain percentage, it's small, of users that are the riskiest users and that are harder to train. Do you treat everybody the same, or how do you handle that? Or any advice there?
Yeah, it's a great point. We have such a diverse workforce, right? 40,000 of our people spend their days at 36,000 feet, right? So their experience with technology is very different than the rest of the employee population. So we've got to reach them in different ways. And sometimes it's providing them with training that's bite-sized pieces, right? Because they can't sit down in front of a computer and do training for 30 minutes. So we're still working to develop ways to get training into the hands of our diverse population. Other of our population have shared computer assets that they've got to work on, and they're not able to do that, in leisure time. Like I can go home and I can do my training at night, when I can sit at my island and eat my dinner and do my computer training, right? We've got folks that can't do that. They don't have that ability. So we are constantly having to think through how do we create individualized training by roles within the airline so that we get the right messaging to the right people in a format that's consumable by them, but also relevant to the role that they play here without compromising on what we want them to have in terms of education to protect themselves when they're not working. So it's a constant evolutionary process.
Yeah, you can't sit still. I mean, the adversary is not sitting still. The world is changing, and so do you have you don't need to name numbers, but how many staff does it take to implement a program like you've implemented?
We have 2 people that support this program. We have 2
Oh,
full-time employees that support our awareness activities, and they have a manager that they report into who was the initial developer of our program, right? And so she was a one-woman show for many years before we were able to justify bringing some additional talent in to help her and then giving her additional responsibilities. But these individuals are actually, we have 3 people now. We just hired an individual who's done a phenomenal job redoing our online training program. So again, we have an online training in our learning management system that every employee is required to take, and she's completely rewritten that training. So 3 people to support awareness to 200,000 employees and contractors.
Honestly, I did not know that. Like, that was we touched on a lot of topics, but that was I was going to expect you to say a much bigger number because your organization is so large and the program is so successful. So I'm glad I asked that question because I know our audience is thinking, I need to do this, right? But do I have the staff?
My advice would be don't hire security people to do this work. Don't hire security people because you've got to be able to develop content for the person that doesn't understand cyber, right? And you've got to develop content in a very engaging way. And when you have security people developing security training, they're coming at it from a very different perspective. So no, the people that we have working are not. At least two of them did not come from cyber backgrounds. That was intentional.
That's really good advice because my next question was gonna be, you know, how do I start? What do I need to start this? Where do I start? And boy, that would be the first thing I would think. I need somebody who knows cyber so they can create the right content, but just the opposite, right? They
Marketing,
need to be
marketing
coming
and
into the press.
sales.
Mark Okay, marketing and
Looking for
sales, I like that.
marketing and sales,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, great. And so would you encourage them to start with, teaching folks how to keep themselves and their families and their kids safe? Or is that a good place to
I
start?
think that's a great place to start, but also what's the corporate messaging that you lean into? Right? And for every company that's going to be different. For us, safety is the most important thing that we do as employees for our customers and as employees for each other. And so we are leaning hard into that safety message and safety extending to cyber. So we start there. And then, yes, obviously, how do we make what can be a very scary topic less scary and make people feel empowered to do something about it?
Empowering people, I like that word actually, because sometimes I feel like they're just that victim mentality takes over, and then we it's not effective, right? We don't have good outcomes. So empowering them, like giving them credit for reporting, even if they clicked, best to
Right,
report, right?
right.
Okay,
This
I've
year,
clicked. Okay, I admit that on my podcast. I've clicked.
I think everybody has at some point.
Yeah, okay.
We this year we actually are as one of the special events during October. We we reached out to our employee base and we asked them who had been a victim of a scam, an online scam, and were they willing to share that story with other employees. And we had a great response. And so we've created videos of these employees that we're going to be showing throughout the month online. And then we're going to bring them into a room and have them talk as part of one of our lunch and learn sessions to other employees about what that meant for them. What happened and how they recovered from that, and what they want others to learn from that event. And it's heartbreaking, right? It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I love that, Debbie. I love that. I mean, it humanizes it and it says, this happens to everybody. It's okay. And I did that's another part of the program I didn't know. I think constant and even bringing in the social media expert and saying, look at all the things I can find out. Um, these are really special approaches that I haven't heard, and I really like them, and you're right, it's not one thing, it's many. I mean, you definitely the fishing derby kinda stands out because of the huge engagement and the
And
playfulness
it's
of
so
it.
much fun, right?
So fun,
So
I
much
wanna
fun.
do it.
But yeah, there's all these other side events that factor into our awareness month activities that are a little more serious in nature. And the scams is definitely one that I think everybody knows somebody, if not themselves, that has been the victim of a scam. Whether it's, we've had people that say, yeah, my mother or my grandmother or my brother or my sister were contacted and told that I was being held hostage, right? And that they needed to send money. Or somebody I know and love lost their identity, or an elderly person in my family was convinced to give access to their retirement accounts to somebody, and now they're destitute, right? Everybody has got a story or knows somebody that has a story. So we want to highlight that because it's far more common than people think. And there are things we can share to help other people not become those victims.
Right. It comes back to where you started, which is you're taking care of your employees, not just at work, but at home. And I think that's super meaningful. Okay, so I'm gonna do a time check here. I think we're getting close. Any final thoughts? Because this has been super interesting, and I know we've oh, wait, I do have one more question. How do you win a duck?
You've got to know the right people.
Oh,
You've
wait,
got
wait.
to register for the fishing derby, or you've got to have an inside.
Okay. So so that's not completely gonna be given away, I guess. The duck
No,
is
we don't just give them away.
okay, all right. This is being recorded, so we're not gonna tell. But yeah, the duck is pretty coveted. I do know that. That's super cute. All right, yeah, so, in all seriousness, any final thoughts for our audience on this fantastic program you put together?
Well, I think anybody is capable of reproducing what we've done by leaning into your corporate values and by recognizing that we all have a responsibility for security. But as security leaders, we have a responsibility for making sure it's a topic people can understand and can consume and feel empowered to do something about, and not just feel like they're going to be a victim. But I would say it's a force multiplier. Look at it as a force multiplier to all of the technology that we spend millions of dollars on, right? And for relatively small dollars, you can have your entire workforce empowered and enabled to help protect the company as your first line of defense. And if they can't get through your people, then they have to make a whole lot of noise, right? That you should be able to detect to get through your assets. So that's kind of how we look at it. And again, we're not, well, I sing the praises of my team because I think they are the most incredible group of people and so creative and artistic to put all of this together. This isn't rocket science. This is something everybody can do. You just have to think differently about how to communicate with your workforce on security.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing with everyone because we all live and breathe this every day, right? And I think that a lot of times we think, where do we start? How to just get started, right?
Start small and go from there.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so glad too I asked the question about the head count. I know your people are amazing, but your people are doing a lot with just 3 folks. So, all right, well, very good. Thank you so much for joining the podcast, and it's an honor to have you here. Really.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor to be here.